Today's message is entitled Friendship in a Facebook World. Now, social networking, if you have been living under a rock somewhere, you might not know that social networking is the number one time consumer of the American time economy. Did you know that? Yep. Yeah. Now, don't write yourself out here by disclosing how much time you spend doing that, but let me give you some statistics here. Did you know that 1 in every 5 minutes spent online globally is done on a social networking site? 1 in every 5 minutes that is on the internet is done social networking, either on Facebook or Instagram, Twitter, those kinds of things. And I'm amazed by that. 1 in every 5 minutes. That's 20% of the time that people spend on the internet. They're social networking. Now, here's some more statistics. Social networking sites reach 82% of the world's internet population. 82% of the people who are on the internet have some form of social networking site that's available to them. Now, do you have one? Anybody here? It's not a bad thing. Okay, do you have one? Yeah. The church even has one. We have a Marina Church Facebook page. So if you ever want to catch up on what's going there, you see pictures, do whatever, just pop over there and take a look. Now, this 82% of the world's internet population represents 1.3 billion people. That's billion with a B, not million with an M. That's billion people that are involved in that. 55% of the world's global audience is on Facebook. That accounts for 1 in every 7 minutes spent online around the world. Now, how many Facebook friends do you have? Anybody here have Facebook friends? Yeah. Now, how many Facebook friends would you call at 3 in the morning to come and help you get to the hospital? Do you have all of them? Yeah, because it's going to take all of them to get one. Okay, these Facebook friends, you know, they're kind of friends, but they're not the kind of friends that you hang around with on a daily basis and say, "Hey, let's go get coffee." Now, some of them are. Let's be honest. Some of those people that are on your Facebook site and that are friends on your Facebook page actually are those kinds of people. But let's take a look at what the scriptures have to say about friends today. In Proverbs 17:17, it says this: "A friend loves at all times." Did I get too far ahead here? Yep, I did. Okay, here we go. "A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for" what? Adversity. Okay, a friend loves how often? All the time. Now, would you describe your Facebook friends that way? They love me all the time. They love me. They would be willing. And let's define what love is, okay? Love is being willing to provide what your friend needs. Okay? Knowing what God's best is for them and being willing to provide that. Now, a lot of Facebook friends, I think, are just kind of Facebook friends because they want to snoop around on your page. So I don't know the quality there. But also in Proverbs 18:24, it says this: "A man of many companions may come to ruin." You know, you have a lot of people that you know, a lot of acquaintances, but you can't depend on those people, is what the writer of Proverbs 18:24 is saying. "A man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother." There is a friend out there that will stick closer than a brother, a sister, somebody that's in your family. Now, I don't know about you, but I have found that people in your family might distance you a little bit more than people who are true friends. Have you noticed that? Why is that, do you think? And I'm just going to posit a theory here, and that is that it's because they know the real you. You know, and they know the good, the bad, and the ugly about you. And sometimes they are not the most loving people. Now, let's define love again, because love is going to be the basic building block of good friendships. When does love happen? When does love happen? When do you love? We've already told you this. A friend loves when? Here, let's go back to Scripture. How often does a friend love? All the time. All the time. So it really doesn't matter if you're lovely or not, does it? And it doesn't matter if you're lovable or not. Your friend loves you. Why does your friend love you? And we're going to talk about you being friends. Why do friends love? Because the object of their love, the person that they're loving, is first of all, a creation of God. Okay? They're a creation of God. So therefore there's a basic dignity and respect that we have for everyone because they're a creation of God. The second reason is because we're asked to do that. Because God loved us so much that he did what? He sent his son Jesus to die for us. And so therefore, as we emulate that, as we live in light of that, then we love other people, not because they're lovely, not because they've done us a favor, not because we have a warm, fuzzy feeling about them, but simply because they are a creation of God and we are directed by him to love them, to want God's best for them and being willing to provide it. Now, ever since Adam and Eve, there's been this thing that has happened between us and God, and as it spreads out to us and other people. It's the single word alienation. Have you ever felt alienated before? Felt like you were all alone? Have you ever been all alone? No, not really. Nobody's not ever really been all alone. Because where is God? He is everywhere, isn't he? So you are never, even if you were out in backpacking country where you were only surrounded by bears and wolves, you would not be alone, correct? You would not be alone because God is omnipresent. He is everywhere, all at the same time. Therefore, even if you didn't have any connection with another human being, you would at least be in the presence of God. You would never, ever, ever, ever be alone. But we have this sense of alienation because ever since Adam and Eve, what have we inherited? We've inherited this thing called a sin nature. Okay, and the sin nature has this aspect to it that is called selfishness. Okay, have you ever felt like, and I'll just give you an example. Has anybody ever cut in line in front of you? Standing in line at the bank or at the post office or at the DMV or whatever. You're standing in line. Somebody cuts in front. What's the first thing that comes to your mind?
He's cut in front of me.
Yeah, he just cut in front of me, and he needs to know about it, right? I need to let him know that hey, the line starts back there. You need to get in the back of the line. We were at Staples the other day, and this lady was waiting, and they never let you get right up to the cash register. It used to be, the line just started there, but they have this little station that says, line starts here, and so then there's this space, and this man, he's just walking around. He just walks up kind of by the cash register, and this lady, I can see, I just love watching people, and I see her, and she's standing there, and he walks up in front of her, and she goes, and she's got the eyeballs that stare, and ladies especially have this. They have this stare that penetrates. Now, if he had been another lady, he would have felt it. However, he's just a guy, so he doesn't feel that stuff. And so he's just standing there, and we're at the cash, we're at the checkout thing, and I'm just looking back and watching this guy, and he's just looking at his stuff and checking it out, and he's admiring his purchase, and this lady's. And pretty soon she does this. She gets right beside her. She says, "Sir, the line starts back there." And she says it rather sternly with the mom voice. Ladies, the mom voice, right? The young man, and he was older than she was. Young man, the line starts back there. And he goes, oh, I'm sorry. So he gets in the back of the line. But, that's the kind of thing that wells up within us. Why couldn't she have said, he's probably in a hurry, let him go. Why not? We could do that, couldn't we? We could be considerate of other people, but yet we have this thing that wells up with, who do you think you are? What are you doing getting in front of me? And that, I want to suggest to you, is our sin nature. And that's what causes us to be alienated from people and also alienated from God, because what did Adam and Eve do when they first sinned? They went and hid. They went and hid from God because they were alienated. They were ashamed. They didn't want to be caught. They didn't want God to see what they really were. And so if I hide what I really am, people will think more highly of me and they'll love me more. Well, I want you to know that a friend loves all the time. No matter the good, the bad, the ugly, no matter what you do, no matter how you treat people, friends love. No matter how you get treated, you will love all the time if you're a true friend. And so today that brings us to something, and let me give you a couple of quotes here. Thomas Wolfe, he said this: "The whole conviction of my life now rests upon the belief," and so now what he's saying is, my whole life is now kind of dictated by this belief that I have. And here's the belief: that loneliness, far from being a rare and curious phenomenon, peculiar to myself and a few other solitary men, is the central and inevitable fact of human existence. Loneliness, he says, is the central factor of all humanity. Now, I don't know about that. Do you? Loneliness. What do you live in fear of most? I don't know about you. We could die, right? Remember I told you about my mom? She says every time a bad situation in my life would happen, she would always say, well, what's the worst that could happen? And, I finally got savvy enough to where I thought, now I've really got the answer for her. And so I said, well, Mom, I could die. And, she's a Christian lady, and she says, well, that wouldn't be so bad, would it? That's not what you want to hear from your mom, of course. But what she was saying is that there's a bigger scheme of things. If you die from this earth and you go to heaven and be with God, wouldn't that be a good thing? Well, yeah, I think that's a good thing. And she would explain that to me, and I'd say, yeah, Mom, I think that's a good thing, but I'm just not ready right now. I'm ready, but I'm just not that anxious for that to happen right now. And so I've become far more sophisticated now. And so I always say, I'm not afraid of death, but I'm not crazy about dying. The process of getting dead. I'm not crazy about that. But loneliness is one of those things that I think every one of us has haunting in the back of our minds. Maybe not right now. Maybe not right now when you're surrounded by family and friends and stuff like that. But when you go home at night and you're alone, even when Cindy's gone, I get lonely. I get lonely because I'm kind of a creature that thrives on people. And people, and let me ask you this, you analyze yourself a little bit. Do you get empowered and do you get energized when you're around people, or do you get energized when you complete tasks? Okay, both. Okay, cool. Now that's a well-balanced person. I'm not so well-balanced. Tasks for me, I get tasks done and I just think, oh, there's going to be some more tasks tomorrow. So I don't get excited about that. But I do get excited about being around you. When I leave church today, I'm going to be pumped up. I'm going to be physically tired, but I'm going to be pumped up because I've been around people that I love and care about, people that I know love me and care about me, and it's an empowering and an energizing thing for me. So think about that, because when we're alone, the more people-centered you are, the more time you spend alone, the more down you get. Okay? So think about that. Albert Einstein said this, it's strange to be known. Let's do this. There we go. Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein says, it is strange to be known so universally. Now, Albert Einstein, I mentioned Albert Einstein, what do you think? We don't know what he's really famous for, but let's say this. Famous theory of relativity. Thank you. I knew there would be at least one person here that would be smart. Oh, no, just kidding. Oh, no, I didn't mean that. No. See, now all of a sudden I'm alone, huh? I just saw everybody exit. Okay, at least turn me off. Okay, it's Albert Einstein, really smart scientist, okay? Strange to be known so universally, all over the world, and yet to be so lonely. So lonely. Today we have more opportunity to be connected to more people, but I think more people live at a higher level of loneliness than ever before. We've become superficially involved with other people. We have not become intimately involved with other people. Now, loneliness, I believe, afflicts everyone. So if you're lonely and alienated today, you're at the right place, because we're going to talk about it. We're going to learn some solutions to it. So let's ask the big question. How do you build good friendships? Okay, anybody know how to build a good friendship? Be a good friend. There it is, right there. Be a good friend. You've heard that a billion times, right? Now, what you probably have not heard is how in 3 steps you can be a good friend. And we're going to be looking at that today. So let's take a look at being a good friend, because the essence of friendship is not who we know, but who we are. Okay? Not who we know, because you think that who you know, I know a lot of people, I know this, I know that, and I would have a lot of friends. But have you ever noticed a lot of people know a lot of people, but they don't have deep and abiding friendships, because they're not the kind of person that others would invest in. So today I'm going to give you 3 tips here on how you can be the kind of person that would be invested in. Now, friendship is sometimes thought as something you engineer for your own comforts. Okay, have you ever thought about that? We want to be friends because we want to network. We might need to use somebody somewhere down the road. And I call that friendships that are kind of like electric blankets. When I need a friend, I can plug in my electric blanket and get warm. It serves a purpose, right? It serves a purpose. And sometimes that's the way people approach friendships as well. They want a friend, they want some friendships when they need something. When you need to borrow a cup of sugar. You know, you need a friend that'll loan it to you, right? When you need a ride to the doctor, you need a friend that might be able to provide that. When you need to be loaned a few bucks, you need a friend that will be able to do that, right? So sometimes we just interact with people to establish friendships so that we can use them. There was a classified ad in a rural New York newspaper, and this is what it said. Farmer, age 38, wishes to meet woman about 30 who owns a tractor. Please enclose picture of the tractor. You know? Friendships that are used so that you can get something. I don't know if you call that a John Deere letter or not, but something like that. Now, I couldn't resist. Okay, now what does it mean to be a good friend? Let's take a look at several things here. A good friend demonstrates three things. Number one, good friends demonstrate faithfulness without gullibility. Okay, faithfulness without gullibility. In Proverbs 17:17 again, a friend loves when? All times. And a brother is born for what? Adversity. When I'm going through tough stuff, that's when my brother steps in. That's when my friends step in because they love me all the time. They see me going through difficult times and they say, I want to help. Again, in Proverbs 20 verse 6, many a man proclaims his own steadfast love. Okay? People tell you all the time, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. How do you know if they love you or not? Their actions, when they show up, when you get to that adversity and there's people there in the adversity with you. Okay? A man proclaims his own steadfast love, but a faithful man who can find? In other words, those faithful people, those faithful men and women are difficult to find because everybody's talking about good friendship, but few people are actually performing it. Now, being able to count on someone is always the litmus test of good friendships. Therefore, if we reverse that and say, I want to analyze how good a friend I am, what would we analyze? We would analyze, am I there for the people that I love? Okay, am I there for them? And I have to tell you, I've got friends that would do an immense amount for me. It's amazing to me, the friends that I have and what they're willing to do to help me out. And so when you analyze what kind of friend you are, you ask yourself, would I be willing to go to the hospital at 3 a.m. in the morning if somebody was having an episode? If somebody was having, and would I be willing just to sit there with their family? Or would I just, what would I do in those situations? That will determine the quality of friendship that you have. Because most of us, I would dare say, worship at the altar of selfishness. Have you ever noticed that? I'll tell you, when is the most selfish time of day for you? I've even got it mapped out for me. The most selfish time of day for me is when I wake up. I was talking with Steve here earlier today. The hardest thing I wake up slow. Anybody wake up slow here? Yeah, thank you, Rosa. Yeah, it's hard. How many wake up fast? I mean, the alarm goes off, your eyes open up, and you get out of bed. Shame on you. That's just not human. That's not human. And I always want to be that way. Rosa, you too? You want to be that way? No, not so much, yeah? Rosa's content with being who she is. And see, I have this internal struggle. I'm not yet come to grips with that. But the hardest thing in the morning is for me to get up. How many times you hit the snooze? 3? Oh. My clock is really cool. My clock you can hit it 3 times and it'll go 30 minutes. You hit it once, 10 minutes, twice, 20 minutes. I learned this the other day when I was stuttering when I was hitting the snooze. 30 minutes, awesome. Yeah. And I was back to sleep. Now that's not good for you, is it? Because when I was talking with Steve, I said, really those extra 10 minutes, what kind of quality of sleep do you get? And how much does it benefit you? Just about zero. But nonetheless, you think, it feels so good to just shut your eyes. And so that's my most selfish time of the day. Because if I say, I could get up and help someone, or I could sleep 10 more minutes. I rationalize. And I say, I could sleep 10 more minutes and help them in 10 minutes. It's just selfish. And so therefore, that's kind of what motivates us a lot of times. We lie. We lie to ourselves about our quality of friendships. We lie about our stuff financially. We lie relationally. And we're not honest with ourselves when it comes to this value of friendships. Now, mark this down because friendship is costly. It will cost you. Now, in my little scenario, it would probably cost me 10 minutes of sleep. What kind of price is that? That's virtually nothing. But just that time, I could say, okay, I could invest this in somebody else, or I could invest it in my sleep. I say, sleep feels pretty good right now. And so, tap, I got 20 minutes. Oh, sorry, I did it twice. And then I just take advantage of that anyway. Now, funeral directors have noticed a marked change in the funerals that are being performed today. You know what the big difference is? It used to be that you could never hold a funeral in the chapel there at the funeral director's place, at the mortuary. You could never do that. You know why you couldn't? Because there wasn't enough room for the people. Nowadays, and you'd have to use a church, we would open up the church and, use the church for the funeral. But nowadays, they rarely get more than 4 pews full, even in the little chapel. What a sad predicament, huh? Now, if any of us has a funeral, okay, we're going to fill the place up because that's what friends do. Friends come to memorials, and I think it's a sad thing when we find that there are people that are passing away from this earth and they're unnoticed. It was unnoticed. It was insignificant. It was insignificant, and it didn't affect me at all. And so-and-so died. Oh, gee, didn't know. So what? What a sad tragedy for us as friends to be able to do that. The depressed girl was having a really difficult time overcoming her depression. And her pastor, she didn't have a car to get to her psychologist, so she asked her pastor to give her a ride. And he says, oh, yeah, I can give you a ride, but I need to stop off at the convalescent home before I get there because I need to pop in on a couple of people. So that's what we're going to have to do before we get to your appointment. So she went in with him, and she saw a couple of people that she knew, some grandparents of a friend of hers. And she stopped in, and she popped in, and she was just chatting with them a little bit. And they asked her to read a passage of the Bible, a psalm to them, because they liked doing that every day. And so she just read that to them. And the lady, the grandmother of her friend, asked, can we just hold hands and pray? And so she held their hands, and the grandmother prayed and everything. And she walked out, and she got back in the car with her pastor. And the pastor dropped her off at her psychologist. And she went into the psychologist, and the psychologist says, there's something different about you today. And she says, oh, really? He says, yeah, there's a lightness of heart about you. There's this exuberance. There's this excitedness about you. And tell me what's different. She says, well, on the way here, I stopped off. My pastor gave me a ride because my car's not working. I don't have a car. And we stopped in. I popped in on a grandparents of one of my friends. And I read a psalm to them. And they prayed with me. And I came out. And I do feel lighter. And he says, we have found the key to your depression. We found the key to your depression. Now, if you keep doing what you did, you'll keep feeling like you feel. And she got this downcast look on her face, and she looked at the ground, and she says, oh, you expect me to do that every day? Well, don't you think that if it benefits you, benefits others, and it lightens your heart, wouldn't you want to do that every day? Friendship is costly. It will cost you something. And this girl came to the realization that, boy, I don't know that I want to pay what it costs in order to feel good. Now, at the same time, faithfulness, being faithful in your friendships, continuing to do it, does not mean that you are gullible. Now, what am I talking about here? And what I'm talking about is that a lot of times when we think we're faithful, we have to trust and completely the person that we're loving. Now, I want you to know there are 3 things in the Bible that it says for us to do. Number 1, it says, how often are we to love? Love all the time, okay? Love all the time. The second thing is, what do we do with our friends? We do another thing all the time, and that is forgive. We forgive all the time. So if you love somebody all the time, you forgive them all of the time, that sets you up to be a really gullible sap, doesn't it? Okay, because if I love them all the time and I forgive them all the time, they could take advantage of me, couldn't they? Now that's why I want you to be faithful without being gullible. Because there's a third word here, the word trust. How often does the Bible tell us we ought to trust our friends? Does it say trust your friends all the time? Doesn't say that, does it? It says love them all the time. It says forgive them all the time. But it does not say trust them all the time. So that's why I say being faithful without being gullible, because trust is something that is demonstrated to you and something that is earned. So don't think that you have to trust all the time in order to be a good friend. Sometimes confrontation is necessary in your friendships, don't you think? Have you ever had a situation where you had to confront a friend and they stayed a friend? Okay, yeah. And sometimes your friendship, in fact, I'm going to say, if it's a healthy friendship, it will always elevate the quality of your friendship when you're able to confront someone in love. Now, don't just be nasty about it. Don't be just nasty about it. You know, like you could say, oh, Pastor Mike, today, you know, it looks like you've had a few too many donuts. You know, have I? Do you believe that I've had too many donuts? Yeah, if I've eaten one donut, I've probably had too many donuts, because donuts are just not healthy for you, but I love donuts anyway. But you could say that just to get it off your chest. Have you ever confronted a friend just to get something off your chest? Just to feel good about it? No. That's not where loving confrontation happens, and that's not faithfulness. Faithfulness is saying, I want you to be better. I want you to be better, and I see this thing happening in your life, and it needs to be corrected. It needs to be corrected because I love you, and I want you to experience the highest quality of life that you can possibly experience. So don't be gullible. Don't always trust, but always be faithful, always be loving, always be one who wants the best for your friends. George Washington, after the Revolutionary War, he said this about friendships. In fact, he was getting ready. Everybody was departing, getting ready to go back to their homes after the war was over. And he had some very faithful friends who had been leaders in the Revolutionary War. And he went down the line as they were getting ready to depart, and he hugged every one of them. And every one of them, tears came to his eyes, and he got choked up and he cried because he was leaving some very dear friends. And he wrote this after that experience. He said this, "Be courteous to all, but intimate with few. And let those few be well tried before you give them your confidence. True friendship is a plant of slow growth and must undergo and withstand the shocks of adversity before it is entitled to the appellation until its fulfillment." Okay, so therefore, he says, be cordial, be friendly with everybody, be intimate with a few people, bear your heart and your soul with a few people, because that's the quality of people you're really going to be connected with that are going to be there for the long haul through adversity. And he says, let adversity prove the mettle of your friendships. Let that adversity be the test of what friendship is. Let adversity in your friend's life test the quality of friend that you are with them. And then he says, hey, let that grow, because it doesn't happen overnight, but that trust, that bond of friendship will grow. Proverbs 27:10. Let's see if I'm way off. Oh, there it is. Proverbs 27:10. Do not forsake your friend and your father's friend, and do not go to your brother's house in the day of your calamity. Better is a neighbor who is near than a brother who is far away. Better is a neighbor who is near than a relative who is far away. Have you ever noticed that? You know, when I went into ministry, my whole life changed. My family moved to Missouri. My sister, my brother-in-law, my mom, my dad, they moved to Missouri. And I was left here in California all by myself. I was so lonely. No, I'm just making that part up. But as a pastor of a church, you grow close to people. You grow close to people. As being part of a church, you grow close to people. And when you have an emergency, calling to Missouri is probably not going to be the solution. Okay, so I didn't. When things happened, I relied on my friends, my family here in the church, and would rely on that kind of stuff. And it started bothering my mom, I noticed. She said, you don't call on me for stuff anymore. I said, no, I'm a big boy now, Mom. And, I'm like, I'm old. And I'm not going to tell you how old I was, but I was still old. And I said, I'm old, I have friends here that, take care of me. And it was a kind of a heartbreaking experience for her, because that's another one of those places where you just kind of have to let go of your kids. And I've gotten to that stage of my life now. My daughter and son-in-law live in Natomas. Very close enough for me to keep an eye on them. However, they have friends there that they rely on and they trust and they use, not use, but that provide for them. That friendship. And it's kind of hard, isn't it? But nonetheless, that's what the writer of Proverbs here is saying. It says, don't forsake your friends and your father's friends, and don't go to your brother's house in the day of your calamity, because you have a neighbor who is near, and it's better than a brother who's far away. So utilize those friendships. Okay, another thing here. A good friend demonstrates honesty without insensitivity. Okay, honesty without insensitivity. Now, how many of you believe in the being a brutally honest person? Okay, don't raise your hands. Okay, brutally honest. I mean, I'll tell you the truth, even if it tears you up. You know, that kind of brutally honest. You know, there are a lot of things that are true, right? Yeah. Now, I don't have a lot of hair on my head, do I? You know, but I don't need you to tell me that. You know what I mean? That's what I'm talking about, brutal. Pastor Mike, you're losing some hair there, buddy. And you look kind of old. Well, I am old and I have lost hair. But, you know, what purpose does that serve? That's why brutal honesty is not what we're talking about here. Honesty, as defined in Proverbs 27:6, faithful are the wounds of a friend, profuse are the kisses of an enemy. Truth, when it's spoken in love, has a healing and restorative effect. Truth, when spoken in love. When I make a correction to you, when I give you advice, when I say, hey, you know, we're in this together, but it would work a whole lot better if we did this instead of doing this, that is restorative truth. It restores people to where they can function properly. Okay, because sometimes we get off track, don't we? And we need a friend that kind of helps us make a course correction. In Proverbs 29:5, a man who flatters his neighbor spreads a net for his feet. Is it the wrong one? 27. A man who flatters, thank you. A man who flatters his neighbor spreads a net for his feet. Have you ever heard somebody just flatter somebody? And it's, you know, it's a tool of manipulation. I'll tell you something that you really think, oh, you look beautiful today, and da-da-da-da-da, and boy, I really da-da-da. Could you loan me $10? You know, that kind of flattery, you know, boy, yeah, I really admire you. You're really a great friend, and I've really counted on you. Can you give me $10? You know, that's just flattery for self-serving purposes. And that's what Proverbs 29:5 says. A man who flatters his neighbor spreads a net for his feet, because pretty soon that he's going to find out the truth, and that net in his feet is going to cause him to fall. Okay, in Proverbs 28:23, whoever rebukes a man will afterward, I like to check, whoever rebukes a man will afterward find more favor than he who flatters with his tongue. If you give somebody a course correction, okay, if you give them a course correction and they're better off in the end, you know what they do? They come back and say, thank you. Thank you, because you saved me from a lot of difficulty. You helped me be on the proper course for life. So honesty without insensitivity. 1 Kings 1:6, we see a story. And in this story is a story of King David's eldest living son at the time. His name is Absalom. And Absalom was a guy that decided, you know, that dad is the king of Israel. But, you know, I'd like to be the king of Israel. And you know, that's usually what princes become. The prince becomes the king when his dad dies, but his dad had not yet died. So what he did was he went out and he got a chariot, and he got some horses, and he got a bunch of men to run ahead of him and announce him as the king, you know, or pretend that he was the king. And so he would ride around the city, and, you know, here's his guys out there, yeah, Absalom, the king, yeah, Absalom, the king. And his dad David is really the king. Now, what would you think David should do? Probably should have a little face-to-face with this guy, you know. Let's have a little time together. You're not the king yet, son. And there's might be a time where you are the king. But however, he had already promised his other son that he was going to be king, Solomon. In fact, he promised Solomon's mom that he was going to be the king. And so therefore, Absalom's never going to be the king. So what should David do? Probably sit down with his son and say, you know, there's a place for you in the kingdom, you know, but it's not going to be king. You know, we have a place for you, but it's not the king. Let's be realistic. Let's be honest here. Quit trying to divide your brother against you, because what he's going to end up doing is just killing you in the end anyway, because that's what kings do to their threats. So his dad should have had a heart-to-heart with him, shouldn't he? You know, it's just straighten it out with him. But notice what it says in 1 Kings 1:6. His father had never at any time displeased him, speaking of Absalom, by asking, why have you done thus and so? You know, he didn't want to offend Absalom. He didn't want to hurt his feelings. He didn't want to, you know, have the confrontation. So he never said, hey, why are you doing all this? And it says this about Absalom. He was also a very handsome man, and he was born next after Absalom. Actually, this is Adonijah. I'm sorry, I got the A's backwards. But he was born next after Absalom. Absalom was another one of the sons, and Adonijah was the guy that we're talking about here. But he went around and said all this stuff, and his dad never corrected him. It was the point of the story. Never said, son, you don't need to do that. So when we come back to this this true friendship, it applies with parenting skills as well. So therefore, honesty without insensitivity. Honesty. When do we know we can be honest without being insensitive? When what we have to say is beneficial to the other person and not just getting something off my chest. That's when we know that we can be honest without being insensitive. Okay? There's a third thing here, and that is acceptance without dependence. Okay? Acceptance. I need to be accepting of my friends without being dependent upon them. Now, not all faults can be overlooked, but not all faults need to be confronted. Okay? So when we talk about this honesty thing, not all faults have to be confronted, but not all of them have to be overlooked as well. Okay? So there are some that can be overlooked, right? You know, the things, have you ever been around a friend that just has a irritating, whiny voice? I was testing the quality of my friendship the other night. We were watching The Amazing Race. Anybody watch The Amazing Race? I love watching The Amazing Race. It's this race that goes all over the whole world. You have to complete all these tasks and stuff. And they had, I think, 5 dating couples that they had in the race. And then they put together 5 other couples that had never known each other. They called them blind dates. And there's this one couple, the guy's a doctor, and this lady is a nurse. You'd think they'd be very compatible. But man, she has the most whiny voice. And if her teammate doesn't do what she wants him to do, boy, she can whine and whine. I told you that we shouldn't have done that. I told you, you just never listen to me. And and on and on. And I'm thinking, man, if I was this guy and I was in the race, I would just quit and get eliminated. I just couldn't stand that. $1 million or not, I don't care. I just would, and probably it would do me good to quit, because otherwise I think I might just choke her to death. Because she was just, and I got to thinking about that. Here's what I'd do if I'm him. I'd just, and I thought, what kind of friend am I? Not all faults have to be confronted. Her whininess, her nagginess, her whatever, maybe doesn't have to be confronted. This guy, man, he showed me what a friend was. He just says, yeah, I know. Maybe I should have listened to you. Yeah. And never raised his voice, never got disgruntled a bit. And I'm thinking, man, just grab her by the throat. Just don't hurt her, but just scare her real bad. No, he wouldn't do it. And I'm thinking, he shows the kind of friendship that we all need to have. Okay. So, where am I now? got lost. Okay, acceptance without dependence. Okay, now in Proverbs 19:11 it says this: good sense makes one slow to anger. Good sense. Now, notice, it doesn't say patience, gritting your teeth, bearing it. It doesn't say all of that. It says good sense. A person with good sense is naturally slow to anger. If you find yourself getting angry quickly, it might be because you lack good sense. Because have you ever seen somebody, maybe you're with them, maybe it's a family member, and they're not happy with the service that they've gotten, and they're kind of confronting that. You didn't bring me my water, my glass is not full, blah, 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 blah. And sometimes it's just not worth it. Good sense says, we don't have to discuss that this way here. You could say, hey, could I have a glass of water? Not, hey, my glass is empty and you haven't been around to take care of it. I'm in charge of the tip here. And maybe, this is the honest truth. I went to lunch with this man, and he was a pastor, and he had a roll of quarters, and he put the roll of quarters on the table, and that was going to be the tip. I don't know how much money a roll of quarters was, but at that time it was a significant amount of money. And so he put that roll of quarters there, and he took it out of the sleeve, and they're just stacked there. And every time he was displeased with the waitress, he would take some of those and put them in his pocket. That was the last time I went to lunch with that guy, because not all faults have to be confronted. Now, again, and how loving and how much have we seen behind the scenes of what's going on in a person's life? Not very much. Not very much. And so we make some snap judgments about that based on our own selfishness and our own demands, and we don't know what's going on behind the scenes in that person's life. During the Korean War, a young man came home, surprised his family. He came back, he was in the Navy. He came into San Diego, and he called his mom, who lived on the East Coast in a fairly prominent neighborhood, and he called her and he says, hey Mom, I'm home, I'm back from the Korean War. And she didn't know, because the communication was sporadic. sporadic at best. And so she heard him, and she says, I'm in San Diego. And she said, oh, my son is safe. And the lightness of her heart, I mean, she was just excited. He says, and I just wanted to know if I could bring a buddy home to live with us. And she says, well, why would you want to do that? He says, well, he has one leg, he has one arm, and he only has one eye. He was blown up. And I just wondered if he could come and live with us. And those are the words he used, live with us. And she says, well, he could stay with us for a few days until he gets settled, until he gets home to his family. He says, no, Mom, I want him to live with us. And she says, well, we can go for a couple of months, maybe. And he says, no, I want him to live with us, Mom. She says, well, son, we don't really have the facilities to take care of somebody like that. We don't have this, we don't have that. And I don't know. Well, just bring him with you, and we'll see what we can do. And we'll just find out. And so she said, okay, I hang up. The next day she got a visit from the Department of the Navy. A chaplain came to her house, knocked on her door, and said, your son died last night. Your son died last night. He jumped off of a building, 12th-story hotel building where he was staying, and died. And she says, oh, no. This has got something to do with his friend, I'm sure. And she felt really bad, and so they arranged for the body to come to the East Coast, and she went down to visit him in the mortuary there, and she saw her son laying there with one arm, one leg, and one eye. How much is the acceptance of us, of other people, how much of that will allow us to overlook those things that maybe we think are a little bit difficult to deal with? Proverbs 25:17, it says this, let your foot be seldom in your neighbor's house, lest he have his fill of you and hate you. That's a pretty brutal passage of Scripture there, because sometimes we can be so friendly that we smother people. So that's why when it says acceptance without dependence, be willing to accept people's faults. Don't have to confront everything. Some things need to be confronted, but not everything. But don't become dependent. Lady had 3 children, and her husband got a new job, and he was out on the road most of the time. And she became very lonely, so she built a friendship with the lady next door. And the lady next door had a couple of children, so they had a lot of things in common. And so the lady would come over. She started coming over right after breakfast, and she would stay till lunch. She would take her kids home for a nap, and then after they got up, she would bring them back to play with the neighbor's kids, and she would stay the rest of the evening until dinner time, and then she would go home and feed her kids dinner, and then she would come back for a little bit of after dinner fun or whatever, and this went on week after week after week after week. And finally the lady had to confront her and say, I love you and I want to be your friend, but there has to be some limits. The solution to your loneliness is not being at my house all the time. And she was able to help her find out what really made her lonely, and it was the absence of her husband. And she found ways to be able to connect with her husband that solved the factor of her loneliness. And so sometimes that's what good friends do. Rather than letting them be dependent on us, we find the solution to their problem and then solve the true problem. Proverbs 25:17 again, let your foot be seldom in your neighbor's house, lest he have his fill of you and hate you. And a lot of friendships are destroyed by that smothering, too much dependence. The friends have the right to be close, don't they? But insisting on being close is quite another thing. Let that happen naturally. George Barna said this. He's a man that does a lot of polling in America. He says, America is a nation in which the yearning for strong friendship far exceeds their existence. The majority of Americans feel that they do not have enough close friends. Among the reasons why we struggle with building and maintaining significant relationships are the high level of transience, which tears us away from those whom we have become friendly, our inability as a nation to effectively communicate with each other, that's another deterrent to close friendships, the fragmentation of our schedules, which makes sharing time together difficult, and the shifts in attitudes that make us less willing to make commitments to long-term relationships. You know what the dream for me, for our church is that we become a safe haven for friendships, where we find places and people that we can count on, where we find places and people where we've built relationships through adversity. If you're going through adversity, don't ever stay home. Okay, don't ever stay home. If you're going through adversity, come to church. Those are the people that love you and that care for you and that want to encourage you and build you up. My dream for our church is to be a place like that. The name of our church is Marina Church. You know what a marina is? It's where boats come to dock. You know why they come to dock? Because out there in the ocean, it's pretty rough. It's pretty tough. And the storms of life sometimes cause us to come to a place like this, where we find safe haven, a safe harbor, a safe marina in which to dock our lives so that we can connect with other people to help bear the burden that we're going through at the time. Jesus says, bear one another's burdens. Bear one another's burdens. And if we don't have an arena to do that, we have to find one. And that's my dream for this church, is that we become one of those. Well, what's the application for today? Take a friendship inventory of your life. And here's what I want you to do. Don't say, who would I call on to be available to me at 3 a.m. in the morning if I have an emergency. But ask yourself this: to whom would I go at 3 a.m. in the morning to help them if they had an emergency? How many people would I do that with? The more of those that you have, the better friend you are. And you know what happens? What goes around comes around. I'm a big believer in karma. In fact, in the Bible, it spells karma this way: you reap what you sow. You reap what you sow. That's a teaching of Jesus. So therefore, if you want a friend, be a friend.